Hi. I haven't done a Facebook Live, I don't think, in a long time. But anyway, hi. Just for whatever reason, felt like hopping on and just discussing a few things that have been on my mind lately. Let's see. Okay. So I just kind of wanted to share some thoughts on forgiveness, and I've been thinking about it, and it's so easy to see guilt and evil and sin in the world outside of us, and we can kind of pretty easily exclude ourselves from that. We can say the problem is out there. They're the problem. They're the evil ones. They're the sinful ones. They're the ones that are guilty, and they need to change. I can't do anything about that. They need to change. The outside world needs to change in order for that guilt to be absolved, in order for that evil to be atoned for. And that's actually a really ingenious plan. It's the plan of the ego, which says that guilt is only outside of me. It doesn't exist in me. Well, actually, in order to see guilt in the world, in order to see evil in the world, we have to have accepted the concept of guilt or evil or sin in our own minds. So actually, the guilt is in our own minds. And then we see, through our own perception, our own perspective, we see guilt in the world. And it's because we have this filter that says, I believe in guilt. And I see through the filter of guilt into the world, where I now project the idea of guilt onto everyone else. And why this is an ingenious plan of the ego is because now the problem is outside of me. And now I cannot actually change anything. I have no control on the world outside of me. Therefore, I'm helpless in the face of evil, in the face of guilt, and in the face of sin, fear, all of those things. And that can be like a really fearful thought. But what teachings like A Course in Miracles help us to realize is that there is not actually guilt and sin outside of us. It's actually in our own minds. And that's the only place that it actually exists. And in order to actually heal that guilt, it can be suggested that you meditate and go deep into the subconscious, where that guilt actually lives, and find it there. And that's where you can heal it. And that can be a totally valid way for you to go about the process of spiritual healing. But it can take a really long time. And so what teachings like A Course in Miracles advocate is that we actually recognize that the outside world is our projection of our own subconscious. So we don't actually have to meditate and go within in order to get into touch with our subconscious. We can actually bear witness to our subconscious every day by the world that we see. So in order to actually heal the guilt in our own minds, we have to forgive the guilt that we see outside of us. And that's the shortcut, right? Is by forgiving the guilt that we see outside of ourselves, that we've actually projected from our own subconscious, our own mind, onto the world. By forgiving what we see in the world, we're actually healing our own subconscious. So you're not choosing forgiveness for the seemingly other person's sake. You're choosing forgiveness because by forgiving them, you're actually forgiving the thought of guilt in your own mind. And slowly but surely, as you choose forgiveness and forgive the seemingly separated people outside of you, you're actually healing the guilt in your own mind, which will lead you to recognize your own innocence as well as the innocence of others. And it's only in our own innocence that we can actually know God, because God only knows us as innocent. So in order to know him, we have to think like him. And it's in the knowledge of our own innocence that we really know God. So I just kind of wanted to share that and see if it was helpful to anyone. I think another concept that is actually really helpful for me is I grew up Catholic. So as I got a little bit older and I started to distance myself from the Catholic doctrine, I started to have more and more of a problem with the term God. And it's likely because my religious upbringing really personified the concept of God and really projected a lot of our own guilt and fear fear of retribution onto God. And I think that still exists within my own mind, because sometimes I don't feel a strong connection to the term God. But what I've discovered for myself is that the term truth resonates much more profoundly with me. For me, it's a much more abstract concept, the concept of truth. So when I do some of my A Course in Miracles lessons, and it'll say something like, the voice for God speaks to me all through the day, I'll sometimes replace the word God with the term truth. And that helps me feel much more connected. I don't have as many defenses built up, and I'm able to actually feel the love and feel the peace more profoundly. And A Course in Miracles does acknowledge that because of that guilt that exists in our minds, we are actually resistant to God. We're actually fearful of God because we're afraid that if God looks upon us, we will be punished. We will be punished for the guilt and sin within us. And so I acknowledge that some of my resistance to the term God lies in that fear. However, it is helpful for me to substitute that word when necessary to help me release some of those defenses that I've built up to God. And I don't know if anyone can relate to that, but it's just been something that's on my mind. And sometimes when I meditate on truth just feels so much more abstract and non-personified and doesn't have the projections that I've projected onto the term God. And it feels really good. So thank you for anyone who's watching. I was just kind of talking about the forgiveness shortcuts that I kind of use. One of them being recognizing that the guilt that I seemingly see in the world outside of me actually exists in my own mind. And by forgiving it in the seeming world, I'm actually healing it in my own mind. And slowly but surely, as I recognize the innocence of others, I also can acknowledge my own innocence, which is the state in which I can truly know God. And sometimes we can get ourselves tripped up because it can seem like other people are doing things, and they're doing things that are sinful or wrong or hurtful. And it can be easy to get lost in they're the ones who are wrong. And that can sometimes be a block to our forgiveness, right? But if we're able to recognize when we condemn others, we're actually condemning ourselves, that can be a big step forward. It seems like people outside of me are separate from me. It seems like we're not united or one. But in truth, if the outside world is a projection of my subconscious, then we are all connected. And when I condemn you, I'm only reinforcing condemnation in myself. And when I see guilt and acknowledge it outside of me, then I'm reinforcing it in myself and only perpetuating my fear of God by reinforcing guilt. And guilt is a block that we put up to the awareness of love's presence because we're scared, we're afraid, and that's okay. So I think that's kind of all I wanted to get on here and say. Thank you for anyone who's listening, and just give it a moment to make sure there's nothing on my heart. Just sending love and acknowledging that it can be a seemingly difficult time with a little bit of the chaos in the seeming physical world, the world of form, but we don't have to acknowledge the reality of form in the sense that we give it power to affect us. We can't choose peace. We can choose love instead. And in that way, reinforce it in the collective mind for everyone. So, thanks.